All right, welcome everybody to the first of our four off-season garden hour presentations. It almost feels like the season hasn't really ended because it's the first Tuesday in October and we were just with everybody at the end of August. Also, it hasn't frozen, so I still have tomatoes, I still have a garden. This feels like we're just continuing summer. And we don't have Laura Edwards on with us tonight to talk about climate and when we might be expecting that next freeze, but I have a feeling this late season garden action might be short lived. But tonight, just like with all the other garden hours, we'll answer questions live as they come in. And then you can also throw your questions in the Q&A or the chat. We will also be recording this session. So for folks that maybe miss hanging out with us live, they can still catch the recording on the SDSU Extension YouTube channel. And for those who might be new to Garden Hour, my name is Amanda Bachmann. I'm the SDSU Extension Urban Entomology Field Specialist based here in Pierre, South Dakota. And I am joined tonight by the Watertown contingent. I was quickly looking up where everybody was located. I was like, oh, hey, you guys are office mates. So welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have Whitney Reetz, who is our SDSU Extension Health and Community Field Specialist based in Watertown. And Whitney, what are you going to be covering for us tonight?
I am going to be covering just kind of some general food preservation, but really focusing on fall food storage.
Awesome. I am looking forward to that because I've already had an acorn squash go somewhat science experiment on me. So, looking forward to your presentation. And then we're also joined by Hans Klopp, who is our SDSU Extension Soil Health Field Specialist, also based in Watertown. And Hans, what are you going to be covering for us this
I'm just
evening?
gonna be talking about fall management slash soil related management of the garden. So
Awesome.
preparation towards next year, more or less.
Yeah, and one of these years I will actually run a soil test and maybe we can talk about it on a later edition of Garden Hour. I'm a terrible gardener. I've never done that. Um, but yeah, thank you everybody for being here this evening. We're going to turn things over to Whitney. And again, if you've got questions, throw those in the Q&A and we'll handle those at the end of each segment. So Whitney, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Okay. Amanda, everything good with my screen?
Yep, looks great.
All right, awesome. Okay, so like Amanda introduced me, my name is Whitney Reetz. I am based out of the Watertown Regional Center. I have been the Health and Community Field Specialist for SDSU Extension since beginning of 2023, and then I joined the Food Preservation Program shortly after I started, so spring of 2023, and have been co-leading that program ever since. So starting off, just kind of a quick overview on food preservation. If you guys are gardeners, maybe you're very familiar with food preservation, but for those that are not as familiar, food preservation is the process of treating and handling food in such a way that it slows down the spoilage process and prevents foodborne illnesses while maintaining the nutritional value, texture, and flavor. So in other words, it helps increase the shelf life of food. Food preservation is needed in many parts of the world and specifically in South Dakota. Since we have winter, we're unable to grow adequate amounts of food all year long unless they are grown in a large greenhouse or something of that sort. So we kind of like to use this example. Think of when you or a family member makes chili during the winter. Do you cut up fresh tomatoes for it? Do you soak beans overnight so that they're ready for cooking the next day? Do you go out and butcher a chicken and boil the bones for broth? Or even butcher a cow and ground the meat fresh? So, obviously, unless you are a part of a very sustainable family, probably not. We used canned beans, canned crushed tomatoes, animal or veggie broth, probably bought from a store, or frozen beef from a store or from a farm. Chile is a great example of how necessary preservation is when it comes to food. Sometimes I think we forget all the different components of food preservation that we use in our everyday lives. So there's many factors that go into how food is preserved safely. The main factors include the water activity, temperature, preservatives, and the acidity of food. Luckily for you guys, we're not going to go in depth on the science behind that today. Just kind of a high level overview of what food preservation is and then how we can use that to tie in our fall food storage. So the common methods of food preservation that I'm going to briefly talk over are canning, which can be broke down to either a boiling water bath canner or canning, and then pressure canning, dehydrating, and freezing. So we preserve food, again, like I just said, so that we have the option to use these foods that aren't readily available during certain seasons and other parts of the year. But there's a lot of benefits with preserving food. So number one is, especially if you're looking going into this fall, an abundance of harvest, and you don't want to waste all that food. So you preserve it. A lot of people will preserve food for the potential for cost savings. It can be a lot cheaper to grow and preserve your own food rather than purchase it from the store. And then, of course, that ability to eat it year round. And then you have a little bit more control over your ingredients, which has become a lot more popular in this day and age, being more aware of what is in our food and what ingredients, preservatives that we may want in our food. So, high level overview on canning. So, microorganisms live and multiply naturally on the surface of fresh food. So, using proper canning techniques removes the oxygen, destroying enzymes and preventing the growth of unwanted bacteria, yeasts, and mold from food. In addition to that, canning also inactivates enzymes, which can cause change in color, texture, flavor, and nutritional content. Canning works by expanding the food through the heating process, which drives the air out of the jar. Then, when the food begins to cool, it contracts, causing that lid to get suctioned down and create that seal. You can often hear a pinging noise when the jars are sealing. That is something that, if you're familiar with canning, you're probably very familiar with that noise. Having those jars sitting on your counter, listening to those pings, knowing that your food is sealing. However, common misconception is that just because your jar sealed means that you have a safe product. You can still get a seal from an unsafe method or unsafe recipe. So we always throw that caveat in there. Just because it seals does not mean it's safe. Still need to be using safe methods and recipes. There's two different types of canning that we use. So water bath canning is going to be for preserving high acid or acidified foods only. So some people that aren't as familiar with safe canning methods will use water bath for everything. However, the only foods that can be safely canned with a water bath canner, that boiling water, is high acid or acidified foods. So both of these guides are on our website under the food preservation tab and shows you some of the foods that can be used for each type of canning. So water bath canning, tomatoes, jams, jellies, pickles, salsa, fruits, and then that pressure canner is for those low acid foods. So a lot more common with vegetables, vegetable mixtures, meat, poultry, seafood, and anything else that is low acid. So home canned food shelf life. So something that may be familiar to you guys right now if you've harvested your garden, have started the canning process, and now you're going to be storing your food for the winter. So home preserved canned goods are best used within a year to 18 months. Try to keep them in a cool, dry, and dark location. Oftentimes people will keep their canned goods in a cellar or a dark, unfinished room in their basement. You can also keep them in a cupboard, just making sure that it's blocked from sunlight. And then always, always label and date your food. Safety is so important when it comes to canning food. Clostridium botulinum is why we take home food preservation safety methods, recipes so seriously, because this Clostridium botulinum can cause botulism toxicity, which is rare but a very serious foodborne illness. Always follow a tested science-based recipe and method. This is very common. We see this a lot. People using handed down recipes, a recipe that they found on Pinterest, a recipe that they found online. It is so important to follow a safe, tested, science-based recipe so that we make sure that we're not consuming and then spreading this illness to others. Moving on to dehydrating. It is, of course, one of the oldest methods of food preservation. The recommended method is to use a dehydrator or oven. There are some other options if neither of those are available to you, like a microwave, sun or air drying. Those just aren't as easy and you don't get as quality of a product. It can be done very easily and is safe to do. Dehydrating is heating the foods at a warm temperature for an extended amount of time so that the food loses the moisture but does not cook. This reduces the moisture content, which in return slows down the growth of microorganisms and enzyme activity. So similar to canning, just of course a different method. Most foods can be dried, but that doesn't mean that they all should be. The foods that we recommend drying are fruits, vegetables, meats, and herbs. These foods have been tested and can be dehydrated safely without a large amount of moisture being trapped in parts of the food. So, a food that is commonly dried in the fall is jerky. So, the hunting seasons are beginning, and people have a lot of meat, whether it be a deer or duck or other waterfowl and birds, and people want to use that meat, and dehydrating it into jerky is a great way to do that. So storing dry foods, it's fairly simple. You need to seal them in a moisture-proof container. People also put deoxygen packets in them, which helps with the preservation process. Like canning, you want to keep dried products in a cool, dry, and dark place. And then those recommended storage times are on the slide here. So if you have fruits from your garden that you're drying, those are safe for up to a year. If you have vegetables that you've dried from your garden, about half a year, 6 months. And then that dried meat, 2 weeks on the counter, and then a month in the fridge. Okay, and then the final just food preservation method that I'm going to talk about for your guys' garden harvests or fall harvests is freezing food. So freezing is, of course, the easiest method for preserving food. We've all done it. We're all fairly familiar with it. It has the least amount of steps, and you do not need any special equipment other than your freezer and some freezer bags or freezer storage. The extremely cold, dry temperature of a freezer slows down the spoilage process. Those enzymes, again, that cause change in color, flavor, and loss of nutrients are inactivated, preserving the food quality. And then with the proper freezing techniques, food should stay fresh for many months. All food has some of that water content to it, so when it comes to freezing, ice crystals from the water form within the cells of the food. This can cause the cell walls to rupture, resulting in a lower quality product when it is thawed. We can be familiar with that with freezer burn. So to try to prevent this from occurring, try to freeze the food as fast as you can, having your freezer on the lowest setting that you can, and then keeping things to the back of the fridge or freezer, excuse me, and trying not to store too many things in your freezer to ensure that everything is getting an adequate freeze. So freezer storage, when you package and store food to freeze it, you can use special freezer containers or freezer bags or foiling. Freezer containers are a little different than your typical Tupperware. These freezer containers need to be moisture vapor resistant, leak proof, be able to withstand freezing temps, resist grease, oil, water, prevent those off flavors and off odors, easy to seal, and then of course we label everything. These containers must not crack or become brittle. And lastly, you need to leave about a ½ inch of headspace to allow the food to expand when you are freezing it. You can also use freezer bags, which help freeze the food in a thinner or flatter shape, which helps with storage. So to neatly stack those frozen bags of food in the freezer, you can lay them out on a flat pan like a cookie sheet, let the bags freeze solid, and then stack them in your fridge. You can see that on the picture in there, that corn. And then if you're using foil, make sure you wrap the food very tightly while pressing out all the air. Making sure there are no cracks for air to sneak in will help prevent the food from becoming freezer burnt or rancid. So a little tip that we like to give people is to freeze in meal-sized portions to avoid waste and then having to refreeze something after you've thawed it, which can of course decrease that food quality. So thinking with fall food storage here, we have those bags of corn up there. So a lot of people like to freeze sweet corn so that you can consume it year round, especially if you had a really good harvest of it. So frozen storage times, they vary greatly based on what the food is. Just use a trusted source to determine how long you should be freezing something and the quality of the food. So I've shared two on here. The first one is from foodsafety.gov. It will go through what that food is. They did have fruits and vegetables on there as well. So it'll show you how long it'll last in the freezer. And then you can also go to the USDA website, tons of FAQs on the side, like um, uh, it has turkey, frozen foods, game meats, herbs, fruits, vegetables that can be frozen, and then what those times are. Okay, so fall food storage. When harvesting vegetables, be careful not to break, nick, or bruise them. The less you handle your vegetables, the longer they will last in storage. Harvest only that produce of high quality. Rotting produce does not keep for very long and can spread disease to other stored vegetables. So, kind of like Amanda mentioned, she has a little bit of a science experiment going on now. So, only storing those good quality foods. Different vegetables need, or vegetables, fruit, produce, need different storage conditions. Temperature and humidity are the main storage factors to consider. There's three combinations for long-term storage. So cool and dry needs to be about 50 to 60 degrees and 60% relative humidity. Cold and dry needs to be 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 65% relative humidity. And then cold and moist needs to be 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 95% relative humidity. So for cold conditions, 32 degrees, of course, is that ideal temperature, but it's not very easy to maintain in most homes. Expect shortened shelf lives for your vegetables as storage conditions deviate from the ideal temperature. This shortening of their lifespan can be up to a quarter of the lifespan there for every 10 degrees Fahrenheit increase in temperature. So basements are generally cool and dry. If storing vegetables in basements, provide your vegetables with some ventilation. Harvested vegetables are not dead. They still breathe and require oxygen to maintain their high quality. And then, of course, protect them from rodents if that's something that where your storage has access to. Home fridges are generally cold and dry. This is fine for long-term storage of garlic and onions, but not really anything else. So putting vegetables or other produce in perforated plastic bags in the fridge will provide cold and moist conditions, but only for a moderate amount of time. Those unperforated plastic bags often create too much humidity, which leads to condensation and then the growth of mold and bacteria, which I think we've all seen at some point with our produce. And then, of course, the ideal situation, a root cellar, provides that cold and moist condition. As with basements, provide ventilation and protection from rodents when storing vegetables in cellars. You can use materials such as straw, hay, or wood shavings for insulation. I would, of course, warn that you be a little bit careful with those because rodents love that material. And then if you are using insulation, make sure that it's clean and then not contaminated with pesticides. I also included a guide on here from the U of M extension, a great resource. I can share the link with Amanda to share out to everybody. It had a guide of different types of produce and then the ideal way to store it. One of them was asparagus should be stored upright for fall food storage. So really great resource, and share some other ones here. So again, we only recommend safe resources. So I thought that I would list our most common ones here for you guys to refer to. So of course, first one, SDSU extension, we have a whole food preservation page, lots of recipes, lots of tips and tricks. You can always search within our webpage to learn more about food preservation or any questions that you may have. And then it also has my contact information and my co-lead Jessica's contact information if you have questions on something that's beyond what we have on the website. And then, of course, any other state's extension resources, like I just had a good resource from the U of M. We have great colleagues all over the Midwest and all over the nation that do really great work when it comes to food preservation. The National Center of Home Food Preservation is the golden standard. We recommend that to everyone, whether they're new to food preservation or a veteran. great resources, great recipes, and that is actually from the University of Georgia Extension. And then a couple recipe books that we recommend. You can find these online in store. So Easy to Preserve, great food preservation book through the University of Georgia Extension. And then the Ball Blue Book is very common, and that one's readily available on Amazon. All right, that is what I have. Included my contact information there. If you have questions that come up later on, but if not, thank you, Amanda, for having me, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so we do have one question for you in the chat. They're wondering about proper storage for onions and shallots.
That is a great question. And that is not something that I know off of hand, but again, this website that I shared, which make sure you guys followed me here. Okay, so this was the U of M resource that I used within the presentation. It goes through all of these for storage. So just kind of showing you guys how this works. So for example, onions, harvest when the necks are tight and the scales are dry, store in cold and dry conditions, cure at room temperature for 2 to 4 weeks before storage, do not freeze, and then the expected shelf life is 4 months.
Nice. Yeah, the University of Minnesota, a lot of their resources are like that with sort of like the little drop down menu things that you can select. So that's a really great one. And I'm sure we can get that posted in the chat for people as well. But yeah, thank you, Whitney. And stick around and we'll see if there's any questions at the very end of the talk. But for now, we'll move on to Hans.
So I'm just going to talk about some management decisions to do in the fall with your garden to prep for next year. I am a soil health person, so I may have a little different take on gardening than some of the other people because am going to try to incorporate the soil health principles of minimizing disturbance, keep cover on the soil, have have a large number, keep something living the whole time via roots, and have a variety of species going into integrate livestock, kind of like the prairie ecosystem. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those throughout this. But the first thing I'm going to talk to is about adding armor or cover back to the soil. Didn't really have a good title for this slide, so I just said dead plant material or previous year plant material management. At the end of the year, there's plants growing in your garden. These plants, as they've grown throughout the year, have taken up nutrients from the soil, and the nutrients from the soil are in the leaves of the plants, the stalk of the plant, and the fruit of the plant you harvest. So there's still a lot of nutrients, plant nutrients, that are contained in the leftover parts of plants after you harvest them. And by returning them back to the soil, you return some of the nutrients you added back to the soil. Whereas if you take them out of the garden, you remove more nutrients than if you just harvest the fruit part. And they also contain carbon or organic matter. And this carbon is cycled, when it's returned to the soil, is cycled back into organic matter in the soil and helps to maintain soil organic matter in the soil. And one issue, I know it's really bad this year, is there's diseases on plants. And one of the ways to manage diseases is to remove the plant materials. And that's why a lot of people in gardens probably do remove their dead plant materials. If I don't see any, if there wasn't any diseases on the plant materials, I would just leave them there. But if there is, I may remove some of them because it can help to manage diseases. I know the plant pathology people talk about that. And I know having a lot of plant materials there can make difficulty with tillage, but I highly encourage people not to till, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. And these plant materials that are returned to the soil can be used by soil microbes for food, such as earthworms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes. And then they could break this down and make the nutrients and the plant materials available, and some of the organic matter is cycled into the dark black colored organic matter in your soil. And also you should remove weed plants that have seed, especially ones that have seed heads, to reduce your weed seed bank for the next year. And the next one is deciding whether to till. In the fall, the soil is dry, which may be a good time to conduct tillage, because if you till when the soil is wet, it is more susceptible. You're more likely to form a plow pan beneath your tiller and have less, the soil doesn't break up as well. And tillage can help to incorporate plant materials, and it can kill weeds that are actively growing, but it also incorporates a lot of weed seeds into the soil, which will come back right back up. And it can make the soil surface dark, which helps it warm up a little faster in the spring. The disadvantage of tillage is it breaks up all the soil structure and pores that have formed through the last year. And in these, like the earthworm burrows and cracks that have formed in the soil, water can infiltrate into and be stored in the soil better than if you break up these pores that have formed. And when you destroy the soil structure and make it into a lot of really small pieces of soil, it is more susceptible to wind erosion. And when you destroy these pores for water to infiltrate into, there's more likely to be more water erosion. Here's what the Till Community Garden in Watertown looks like in the spring. You see it's all broken up really fine. Some of it's starting to wash off and it's blown off the edge a little bit. I do not like to see the soil like that. I know a lot of people have the habit of liking to see the soil dark black, but I really do not like to see it that way. I would rather see lots of cover on top of it, whether it's cover crops or just plant material from the last year. I know a lot of people probably don't plant cover crops into their garden. Well, a choice you can make this fall is to incorporate cover crops into your garden. This late in the year, you should select species that are winter hardy. And planting cover crops can help to suppress weeds, especially early season weeds that come up next year. Some of them that are leguminous plants can fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, which the next year when they break down becomes available for the plant to use and can give you some nitrogen available for the plants, and you can cut back on fertilizer a little bit if you get a lot of biomass. And cover crops improve soil health by releasing root exudates that soil microbes eat by keeping cover on the surface and helping to create pores through the soil with their roots. So here's some cover crop species and planting methods. Good species to plant nowadays: cereal rye. That's probably the staple and most common cover crop planted, and will probably produce the most biomass and be the best for weed control. Hairy vetch is one that people commonly plant to fix nitrogen. It's a lot more popular farther east in the US and in the southeast US because it can produce a lot more biomass, which can add a lot more nitrogen. Here, you're probably not going to get a ton of biomass from them unless you let them grow really late, grow through May and into June, which is probably too late for your garden to terminate them. And winter camelina will overwinter too, but I've been working with it and it's pretty slow to get growing in the spring. So your best bet would probably be to plant cereal rye or mix hairy vetch and cereal rye together. But I wouldn't expect to get a cover crop more than 6 inches or a foot tall this following spring if you plant it. It's not going to be as tall as the cover crop is in that previous slide with my cover crop experiment in the garden that overtook what I was trying to grow. And I think I said cereal rye would be a good choice for weed control. If you want to add some nitrogen to the soil, it would be hairy vetch. Hairy vetch seed's a lot more expensive than cereal rye. And you need to buy a northern sourced hairy vetch seed if you're going to plant it, because some of the hairy vetch that's southern sourced cannot tolerate the winters in South Dakota. And methods to plant it is to broadcast it on the surface, incorporate it with foul tillage, or to plant it with a grain drill. And if you're broadcasting, you may want to seed it at a higher rate than drill seeding. And I would say if you broadcast it, you should probably water it, because here's some cover crop I broadcast into some corn about a month ago. And they've only got like 1.5 inches of rain since I broadcasted, and it's starting to look kind of dry and it really could use some rain. And one of the soil health principles is to incorporate livestock. If you were to graze a garden, I would do it in the fall. And this will allow, because you don't have anything growing that you're going to actively be harvesting, and livestock would eat stuff that you'd want to harvest. And also, there's bacteria that are present in the manure. And livestock can eat plants that are slow to break down, that have a high carbon and nitrogen ratio, and make it to a low carbon and nitrogen ratio, something that's more easily broken down versus something that's slowly broken down. And the soil microbes like to eat the manure, which has a lower carbon and nitrogen ratio. And here's an example of to do it a mobile chicken pen. Like, you could either graze the chickens across different parts of your garden, or feed the chickens in one spot of your garden for a couple days and then move it a little ways and feed them somewhere else, and just move them through your garden. It would add some fertility to it. They might eat up some seeds and various things. Or you could graze it with goats or something else too if you had them available. Another choice to do is to soil sample. A lot of agronomists sample soils in the fall after harvest, just because it's usually drier conditions and easier to get in. And some people add some fertilizers in the fall. So if you want a soil sample, you want to sample before you add fertilizer. So if you're going to put down manure or compost in the fall, or some other nutrients, you'd want to sample before you put it down. And you could just have a really basic NP and K measured on your soil if you're just going to apply that, or having a routine soil analysis that measures organic matter and more nutrients is adequate. And if doing soil health analysis to compare to the year, I would collect them from the same time each year. And from some people I talked to said it's better to measure soil health analysis or soil microbial properties once the soil has warmed up in the spring and has some moisture in it, because they're more active than in the fall when the soil temp is cooling down. Another thing you can do in the fall is apply fertilizer. It's usually drier and easier to get into the field or garden in the fall. And I would not recommend adding like urea or some other type of just nitrogen fertilizer in the fall. People commonly add phosphorus or potassium and lime in the fall, so it has time to work into the soil. And if you apply nitrogen in the fall, or apply like a fertilizer with nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, and I would wait till the soil is cooled a little bit, because when it's warmer, the ammonium and organic N will be converted into nitrate, which can be easily leached in the soil. And if you're applying manure and want to harvest stuff early in the spring, I would just apply the manure in the fall if you're so to be safe for organic certification and not have bacteria issues in your garden. And fall's a good time to think about your preparing your garden for the following year. Some practices do include deciding what tillage to do, residue management, soil sampling, cover cropping, and fertilizer. And you should make these depending on what you're planning to do the next year. Sorry if sorry if I went a couple. There's my contact information. Sorry if I think I was only supposed to go 10 minutes, but I tried to go fast.
Nope, you're good. Yeah, and the bit about, removing residue because of disease issues. Yeah, we ended the season with some of our plant pathologists, and there were definitely some plant diseases moving around in eastern South Dakota. And then obviously, like, everyone got very excited about aster yellows, um, some of our fun like viral diseases. So yeah, removing plant residue can be really important for pathogen management. But if folks have questions for Hans, feel free to throw those in the Q&A and we will get to them at the very end. I'm going to go over some of our fall insect friends and enemies to round out the evening. So let me share my screen. Cool. I think we're good. Yeah, I figured I would start out with the multicolored Asian lady beetle because this is one of the most frequently asked insects right now. So this one's been very interesting this year because I've had a lot of people asking me about Asian beetles. And fun story, you're probably referring to the multicolored Asian lady beetle, which is one of our lady beetle species. It was introduced to the US back in like the 1910s. So it's actually been in the country for over 100 years. And it is taxonomically in the same family as our native lady beetle species. So shortening the name might be faster to say, but I feel like it's a weird attempt to make the beetle seem more invasive or more nefarious than it really is. Um, we've had it for a long time, guys. It shows up every fall. They overwinter as adults in structures. As you can see in this photo, sent to me by my colleague Connie Strunk. She was down at the Southeast Research Farm in Beersford, and they were having quite the plague of multicolored Asian lady beetles a couple of weeks ago. But these insects move out of ag fields predominantly. So they are predators of aphids, which, if you've seen me talk before, you know I love aphids, and they are the plankton of the garden world. So these insects were having a great time this summer in our crop fields where there were plenty of aphids for them to be eating. And as the crops dry down and are harvested, they're going to not be dead yet because we haven't had a freeze, and they're going to be moving around looking for something else to eat, and that's how we end up interacting with them so frequently. They're also, like I said, looking to overwinter in some sort of sheltered location, which can often be our attics, our campers, our cabins, our basements. And yeah, we are not part of their food system. We're not part of their life cycle. But if you're handling them or you have one land on you and maybe you like accidentally crush it or you don't know what landed on you, they might bite you. They do have chewing mouth parts, but again, we're not their food source, so they're not trying to like drink our blood like mosquitoes are. But yeah, multicolored Asian lady beetle, out and about. It does the same thing as our native lady beetle species, and there's not really anything you can do for them except to kind of set up your defenses to keep them out of your house. But this is not something that we recommend using an insecticide for outdoors, just because any products that would kill these guys would also be damaging our native lady beetle species. And then the other fall insect that's been really making headlines is the minute pirate bug. This is in our true bug order, so it's in the Hemiptera order, with our assassin bugs that I've talked about earlier in the garden hour seasons. Even our cicadas, our stink bugs, those are all in that true bug family. And these guys are also predators. They're also coming out of ag fields, and they are also biting people. So we're not part of their life cycle. We're not part of their food system. And they just will kind of taste anything they land on in the hopes that it is something they can eat. So these guys are very small. So they're like less than an eighth of an inch. This picture was sent in by a client. I was super impressed that they got such a magnified, solid picture for me. But yeah, these guys are little. Some people are calling them no-see-ums, which no-see-um is like it's a taxonomically meaningless word. It could be a whole bunch of things depending on where you are in the country, what time of year it is. Minute pirate bugs, I would not class them as a no-see-um because you can actually see these guys. They have a piercing sucking mouth part, so they're going to be stabbing you, unlike the lady beetles, which are biting you. And then the saliva that they use to digest their prey, some people, myself included, can have a really kind of not great reaction to that, and it causes an itchy red welt. So yeah, minute pirate bugs out and about. And again, the only thing that we can really do about these is wear long sleeves and wait for it to freeze. If you're in an area with a lot of row crop production, the multicolored Asian lady beetles and the minute pirate bugs are going to be insects that you see pretty much every fall. It's just going to be a matter of how high the populations are, based on how much prey they had during the growing season. And we didn't really have any kind of early little mini cold snaps to kind of start knocking these populations down. So we are seeing them, still being quite active, and I think they will be for the next, week or so until we get some hard freezes. And as it cools down, there are insects that are looking to move indoors. Obviously, the multicolored Asian lady beetle is one. The box elder bug pictured here is another one that I hear about a lot in South Dakota. And these guys, totally harmless. They're not going to even try to bite you. They're herbivores, but they are looking to spend the winter someplace with some shelter. If it was, January here in the Pierre Regional Center, I would probably have one or two flying around that I could show you live on camera, because we get them here in the office as well. But our multicolored Asian lady beetles, our box elder bugs, the picture wing flies, the western conifer seed bugs, there's a whole sort of host of insects that's looking to kind of come in from the cold. For management of these, it's really doing some perimeter treatments. So this is an insecticide that has a longer residual activity. Any critter, any arthropod that walks across it will die. So you'll still have dead insects inside, but they'll at least be dead. So that's one thing to consider. And then also just, getting out there and fixing any holes in screens, door sweeps, checking on attics and basements, any cracks or crevices, places where these find their way in. The more of those you can fix, the fewer insects will actually, be successful in overwintering someplace like your basement. So again, these are also insects that are not feeding or reproducing indoors. So you're going to see them in the winter, when it warms up and they're trying to get back outside, but they're not increasing their numbers over the winter season. They're just finding their way in now, chilling out, and then hoping to make it out in the spring. And then, yeah, fall garden cleanup. I'm on team like relax a little bit about it. Obviously, like Hans said, if you've got some plant disease issues, removing the diseased plants can be very important because you want to remove that inoculum from the system. But like, for me and my lilac bush with like powdery mildew, that comes back every season. Whatever. I don't really do anything special with that. But if you can, leave stems and leaf litter. So if you've got like I've got my sedum, those stems are going to dry out and like hang out all season. Same deal with some of the milkweed and sunflowers in my yard. Echinaceas too, if they're not, phytoplasmid. But yeah, those stems especially can be nesting habitat that they've been used by some of our native bee species. So you want to leave those pretty tall and not, fully remove them until later next spring because you want to give those bees a chance to be able to emerge. So some you can definitely do, whatever you want. It's your property, but you can, biologically, ecologically, it helps out to leave some of that habitat available for our insects to be overwintering. If we have a completely sterile sort of outside environment, all of the insects are going to be wanting to hang out in your basement. So they do need that debris in order to survive the winter. Some of our butterfly and moth species are going to be overwintering as pupa, and they might be doing that in leaf litter or some other sheltered locations outside. So that's why, raking up all the leaves and then like throwing them away or burning them or otherwise destroying them also destroys, the pupa of some really cool insects that we want to, have around for the next growing season. So you can chill out a little on the garden cleanup and, maybe keep some of those nutrients in your garden instead of bagging them up and throwing them away. Also, leaving the standing stems in places can be really great for catching snowfall and allowing that to then melt slowly and kind of recharge the soil moisture. So uh, we plant, shelter belts for a reason, and you can kind of experiment with the same effect in your backyard as well. I did want to throw in a little monarch update. I actually saw another monarch in my backyard this morning. I'm guessing that it was one that was sort of locally emerged because most of the monarchs have already moved through Pier. So this one was getting much more of a late start. But we are past peak migration in South Dakota. The peak migration has made it down to Kansas, Oklahoma, like southern Kansas, northern Oklahoma. So they are getting there. But you can still definitely check if you've got like roosts of them in trees. You know, if you notice quite a few monarchs, or maybe you noticed them in September when we were really in sort of the peak migration activity in South Dakota. But monarchs that, you know, caterpillars that kind of got a late start turning into a chrysalis are still going to be emerging, you know, up until we have hard freezes. And any of those, you know, might get lucky and be able to kind of catch up and make it to Mexico for the winter. And just a reminder of some of our upcoming events. So we're going to be doing this off-season garden hour 3 more times. So November 25th, we're going for end of November versus December this year. John Ball will be on that one talking about holiday plants and Christmas tree selection. And then we'll be back again in February and then also in April before resuming our regular season the first week of May 2026. So I did just want to share that for folks that might be joining us live or watching the recording. You'll have a couple more chances to talk to us about plants over the winter. But until then, I am going to exit that and see if we've got any questions. The Q&A has been pretty quiet.
I was gonna say on the cover crops I planted cover crops after I harvested like my onions and potatoes and things just where they were growing, and there was just a whole cocktail of insects just sitting on the cover crop just because they were green, and there was buckwheat in there, and they were
Oh,
opportunistic. They're just all being opportunistic because there was something
yeah.
growing there, but
Yeah, and honestly, those cover crops create great habitat as well for some of our insects to be overwintering. So I'm sure, you know, probably some of the grasshoppers are appreciating the late season munchies. But we also
there was
have,
de- there was definitely grasshoppers on there.
yeah. I saw there was like a very large two-striped grasshopper just like on the porch staring at me the other day, and I was like, oh, hey, like you've survived all of the robins that have been like moving through the yard, eating all of the bugs. But yeah, it doesn't look like we have questions. Whitney, I really appreciated your presentation. I will be looking up some of the different things on the University of Minnesota website. I predominantly have tomatoes that I need to store, and I just cheat and freeze them immediately. They're cherry tomatoes, so they're not like a really good canning size. But I appreciate that all of those resources exist, and there's been a Ball Blue Book on my shelf for since like grad school when I was really into canning.
I
Um,
do some canning. I'm making some sauerkraut right now.
oh, nice.
And I
Yeah, yeah.
realized I had another like one of those cabbages I planted that got big that was like 12 pounds I just picked today. So I don't know how I'm gonna store it in my refrigerator.
You're gonna be cutting that down, and yeah, incredible. I am not cabbage's biggest fan, but that is an impressive crop production there.
Mhm.
Before we head out tonight, Whitney, are there any like last minute tips or tricks that you want to share with folks who are maybe thinking about what to do with some of their fall garden harvests?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you are, it just kind of depends where you're at with gardening and food preservation. If you are someone that's been doing it for years and you feel really comfortable with it, feel free to explore some of those resources that I shared or explore our webpage if you need. If you are brand new to food preservation, or maybe this is the first time that you did have a really abundant garden, always feel free to reach out to us, send us an email, give us a phone call. We love to help you guys. At the end of the day, we want everyone to be doing safe food preservation, and you put a lot of time and effort into your garden. So we want you to be able to use it to its fullest. We also have a lot of master food preserver volunteers scattered throughout the state. You can also find their locations on our website, and we would love to connect you with them as well because they are our experts that are out in the field. So always feel free to reach out and ask those questions. We want everyone to be doing their very best to do everything safe and get a great product. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Whitney. And Hans, any final words of wisdom?
I would just discourage people to do fall tillage because I'm a soil health person, and I would encourage people to leave as much plants there as possible so it can catch snow, keep the soil covered. And like you said, a lot of the insects use that as habitat too. Both good, mostly good ones.
Yeah, yeah, we
So
get a lot of beneficial insects out there, and honestly, some of the not so good ones end up being food for birds. And I know this winter, for those folks out there that are birders, there's all sorts of great winter birding events to keep an eye out for to stay active outside even when we can't be in our gardens. So, with that, thank you everyone for joining us for this first off-season garden hour. We will see folks again in November, February, and April. And until then, enjoy this sort of late season fall gardening. So, see everyone later. Happy gardening.